And welcome to the Filmstein podcast, the podcast where we are challenged with trying to articulate a love for art and storytelling. Today I am joined by my weekly friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone.
I'm glad everybody could join us today. Thank you very much for being here. Because today we're talking about Juan Carlos Fresnadillo's 2007 film, 28 Weeks Later. I'm very curious where this conversation takes us today, because we're coming off the back of something that was trying to be something to something that is sort of nothing at all. It seems to suggest these little ideas and then forget it ever suggested them to begin with, like this family drama, the fact that America is helping Britain rebuild, maybe a tinge of survivor guilt, the perils of love, and maybe even one of the bolder through lines of a government or military acting as protector and oppressor. In all honesty, it feels like a quintessential example of 28 days made a lot of money. We need to capitalize on that, and let's just take it to the next somewhat sensible level. Because you can imagine the third 28 days, I guess 28 years, being a wider post-apocalyptic setting. And what that ultimately equates to is a popcorn film that is deeply unoffensive, deeply uninteresting outside of the movement of our characters. They're very fortunate to have an ensemble because there was no character relationship, arcs. We do get this weird conclusion, I guess, with the kids killing their zombie dad. There almost was like a need for him being an abuser of sorts, and they got away and managed to get some kind of redemption on that point. Obviously, that wasn't the case. This dad appeared to be very loving, maybe too loving. But the kind of launching point of the rhyme or reason to even have the film with the kids escaping is silly at best and stupid at worst. I kept thinking, man, I wish the kids were more innocent. I was kind of thinking the kids from the Japanese film from 2023, Monster, those kids would be really great in this because they're just innocent, acting like kids. But these kids are on a premeditated mission and seem to be pretty aware of the threat. Maybe if the sister was a little bit younger, but she wasn't even a major player in this. The brother was making the decisions ultimately. The involvement of America being here is a fun idea, but it doesn't seem to go anywhere from what I can tell. I do like the idea of something being wrong with the society, kind of like what we alluded to in 28 Days, where the zombies represent something much more sinister within us, something broken in the system. I do like the idea of something like an America coming in, wanting to be the hero to fix this, but that just not being realistic, and the revolution has to happen from within. Of course, that doesn't go anywhere, but I'm very curious. What do you think of 28 Weeks Later?
I was definitely into this movie. I love the idea of some sort of reconstruction, rebuilding of society, well, at least in England, after the events of the first one. In the first film, we lose control, there was chaos. But what happens when institutions think they can contain that chaos? That obviously backfired and erupted, and I very much enjoy the concept. We have a proper telling of an A plot and a B plot and connecting it in the middle. And the central conflict is pretty defined. These kids must be saved as they are found to be potential cures, specifically Andy. We have the bare bones to a story here. I do like this bigger focus on the political military side of things and tying that into the first film on how humans are still the villains. But here we have some individuality to our characters. but the bare minimum amount of individuality. We have relationships, we have character interactions, and what I mean by that is that these characters actually talk to each other about their feelings and whatnot in this world. But we lack some of that backstory, we lack some of that character development. The children, like you said, have no remorse whatsoever over what they have caused. Don's character arc did not feel earned. The most character development we get here is probably Doyle. He's the only one who seems to not only feel some sort of way with what's happening here, but from start to finish, his story overall makes sense. There was also a mother-son element here that I couldn't quite figure out. Yes, it was the catalyst to that outbreak, but symbolically, I wanted it to mean something. But overall, the film had proper tension. I literally gasped when he kissed his wife. I'll also bring up the question, why did she let him kiss her? It was pretty brutal when the authorities called that code red and it was a free-for-all, kill everything in sight. That was crazy. And the whole time they're trying to escape, I'm rooting for them. I want them to escape, especially the sequence where they're about to bomb District 1. But everything just felt so hollow, and maybe that's where that popcorn film feeling comes in. The editing was still a bit too much for me, pretty chaotic. There's only one sequence where that chaos was warranted, and of course it's that scene where they tell everyone to stay in that parking garage looking place. They're all trapped. Don Zombie comes in and everything's chaos. We don't need to know what's happening here. That's a sequence where it is left to our imaginations. Honestly, there's no better way to have done that scene. Performances were okay. The kids were okay. The pacing was fine. The soundtrack was as good as the first one, if not better. And I do appreciate the end of the film. I'm not sure how open-ended it was meant to be on how the virus spread, but I like to imagine that it was. We get this view at the end of Paris being infiltrated by zombies, and you can't help but to think, how did it spread mainland? Was it Andy? Did he sneeze on someone? Was it the zombies? Did they manage to get away? The virus was spreading pretty fast. Or was it another way? I'm thinking maybe birds or animals. Overall, this was a fun watch.
I share a lot of the same sentiment. I'm probably just a lot lower on the film because I want more than entertainment. I don't know why I'm just adverse to simply being entertained, because I was definitely more entertained by this film than 28 Days Later. Because I'm kind of left with the taste of, why even make this film? And to your point, yes, to spread the virus, and I like to imagine that the zombies just got on planes and just went different places. First class. And I definitely agree with you. We get the most heart out of Doyle, which is a little ironic, I think, because A, he's a military guy, right? He's this stoic, in theory at least, punctual man who is ready for the call of duty. On the backdrop of this quarantine zone ran by the military, you'd think it'd be a little cynical and objective, and everybody would be kind of flying straight. But in a funny way, we get the most kind of sense of hope out of Doyle. Like, oh man, these kids potentially are an answer to this problem. And then he dies in a really brutal way.
I know.
It's very cool. I will also say I like the beginning a lot when Dawn runs. And we do share a similar kind of editing style here from the first one. It is out of control. And of course, that opening scene is a victim of that editing flavor, but the action is much more immediate. There's not this weird perspective switching, and And I think we even lay off on the shakiness. It's just the quick cutting at this point. But Don jetting out of the cottage, leaving his wife behind and those other people, it's cool. Especially because it's another kid. Another kid caused all this.
We need to get rid of these kids.
And to your point about all the people in that like parking garage type space, very big open space where they contained all them to try to protect them, I guess, ultimately. The camera gets pretty crazy under there. And it was for the first time for me too. I was like, wow, the editing here makes sense. Because to your point, we don't need to know exactly what's going on. We just need to be so disoriented to the point where we're nauseous, and we don't need to know what is left, right, up, or down, because the people in the scene also don't know what is right, left, up, or down.
Exactly.
And I guess that kiss scene is kind of in the vein of the blood drop landing on Frank's eyeball. It's like just stupid enough that it works. I don't know what it is about it, but I'm just like, man, first of all, doesn't everyone in this world at 28 weeks know how this thing is transmitted? I guess you're not completely aware that your wife has the virus. Obviously, right? She would be a zombie if she had the virus. So he's like, she doesn't have the virus. She just, something's wrong with her. I don't care who that is, my daughter, my wife, my mom. I'm not getting anywhere near that person. But when they kiss, it does kind of read like she's getting him back for a second, and then it doesn't. It's just like, that feels like a loophole in direction or performance. I'm not really sure. I'm like, that's a little hard to read through. Don's transformation's cool. It reminds me a lot of Frank's too. It's just really over the top. It's fun.
That kiss definitely left me bewildered. Because I, too, thought, she's getting him back for this. I kind of liked it. But then it felt like she honestly just wanted to kiss him goodbye without caring of the repercussions to that kiss. I don't know. It left me a bit confused, too. I just hate what we did with Don. His entire character arc starts out cool. I like that he runs. What else did we want him to do? He couldn't run back into the building. He was going to die. There was no obvious way to save her. He didn't know she was immune. But then the whole movie, we sort of build him to be a villain. I like what you said about him giving this vibe that he almost needed to be an abuser of some sort to justify that weird conclusion where they kill him. And to me, it felt like the film did paint him to be a bad father or a bad husband simply for leaving the mom behind.
Yeah, the film didn't seem to like him very much, even though what he was doing was not necessarily a problem.
And it's not earned. It's not fair for the film to paint him in that light when all he did was survive. They shouldn't have made him lie to the kids about seeing their mom go down. He saw her die. And then he later comes back and says, well, maybe I didn't say I saw her die, per se. Everything else just doesn't feel fair to do to his character. When there were moments where he was a loving dad. He just cared so much for his kids. He was obviously a loving husband. It's not his fault his wife let in a random kid and caused everyone to die. To justify turning him into a zombie and later killing him in the way that he was killed, we should have made him a bad dad. And in that intro scene, we should have maybe gotten a glimpse of some stairs or another window or some way he could have potentially saved her, but said, nah. We just painted him so bad that I wanted more reasons to hate on Dawn, like we did.
Yeah, they make everyone's relationship with Dawn, including the audiences, kind of awkward. I feel like they should have just made it where Dawn couldn't talk about it with his kids. He felt too guilty.
That's also fair, yeah.
And then maybe just have Dawn be one of the first zombies that is killed. Like, I don't know what this kind of redemption moment thing that happens at the end. I don't think it is supposed to be some kind of redemption, but they definitely paint it that way. But to your point, they do kind of make Dawn a weird villain. He's a liar. He, in quotes, could have done something to save their mom. but it's really not just that black and white. It kind of feels like it's that boardroom checkbox of we gotta kind of have a central villain. Who's it gonna be?
I also like what you said about the film needing innocent kids, because I think the movie thinks it has innocent kids. These kids were not here in the outbreak. They were off somewhere, not in England, on vacation. They don't know what happened. All they saw were maybe news stories. So I don't think they were completely aware of the threat. And that's why the film made them go out to get the mom's picture so nonchalantly. They have no remorse for what they've done because they're supposed to be innocent. They're not supposed to know. But I agree with you. These kids are not innocent. Again, like Dawn, they weren't painted in the correct light that the film or the story was trying to show us.
Yeah, definitely a sign of bad directing, bad casting, and bad writing.
Because through the innocence of the kids, through the innocence of specifically Andy, we could have had that mother-son thematic, symbolic thing I was hoping for. There's no coincidence that both Alice and Andy had those eyes.
Yeah, he wasn't in need of his mom enough. He was coming off the thought of, I don't want to forget what she looks like. It's kind of lame. Yeah, what is that bamboozling of hoping the audience is going to get any kind of substance out of that hollowness? Are you telling me a couple of teenagers are going to go into a middle of a Ukraine-Russian war zone or Israel-Iran war zone just because they don't know about what's going on specifically? They're like 14 and 17, 16 maybe.
Old enough to know better.
Big time.
And the justification isn't enough.
Oh, I'm going to forget what mommy looks like. It would have been such an easy sell to have an 8 and maybe 10-year-old just needing their mom. And then it would have been such an easy way for Dawn to beat around the bush. Because how do you tell an 8-year-old that your mom's dead? But instead we have this deeply awkward situation of painting a dad trying to protect their kids from something that he's not even ready to admit to himself.
Definitely. There's definitely an issue with the story, the writing, versus the cinematography and how questionable ideas are painted. I just think the film is stuck on this overall allegory, overall theme of how quickly humanity can lose itself in a time of chaos or stress or whatever, without really thinking about what kind of story we want these characters to go through, what kind of human emotions, connections that make us connect to the overall story. Why do I care if humanity loses itself? Because I have a relationship with my dad, because I have a relationship with my mom, because I have a relationship with other people and wanting humanity to thrive. That's why I should be scared. These individual stories help your overall story. And these underbaked situations are not helping capture that feeling of why I give a crap. Because how does a story like A Quiet Place, Day One, with just a girl and her cat and another human being, give you those connections, those moments on why I want them to survive? I want humanity to survive. I don't want anyone to be taken by these evil monsters. How do I want a cat to survive more than I want Andy to survive or Tammy to survive?
Yeah, based on what we got out of this film 28 weeks later, I kind of wish Scarlett, the military scientist who is the only one interested in a cure, just, stumbles across it somehow, and an outbreak happens in the background, not unlike A Quiet Place Day One, and this somehow charms Doyle. Doyle sees the crumbling position that America has in retaining any kind of hope in the British Isles. So he joins forces with Scarlet, and kind of in the vein of The Last of Us or I Am Legend, we lose one of them along the way, probably Scarlet, and Doyle has to kind of continue the march of getting this cure in the right hands, or getting the potential of some cure in the right hands.
Yeah, how wonderful would it be that the person who was inspired by the original person who wanted to save the world, there's nothing like passing on someone's ideas and someone's beliefs because you believed in them so much. So Doyle surviving on with the kids would have made sense.
Well, I'm thinking kind of just get rid of the kids.
Oh.
It might even be cool if the ending section was Doyle being burned alive, losing the potential of a cure in the process. All right, man. Well, thank you very much for watching this movie and talking about it here today.
You're welcome.
Do you have a budget guess?
Well, if the first film was 8 mil, I'm going with 15. We can't get too high up there. This is still horror movie territory, in my books at least. So 15 sounds not too high, but more than the first one.
Well, it says here that it was 15 million.
Ooh, right on the money. It's like the third time I've done this.
And it went on to make 72.3 million. Down from the first one, so that's why it took 50 years to get the third one. And over on Letterboxd with 534,000 people, they weighed in at a 3.0.
Pretty average. I think I'm going to lean towards a 2 on this film. I'm not as adverse as you are to being entertained. I am for popcorn movies. I love popcorn. I enjoy a good movie. I enjoy being entertained by movies, at least. But I also want some depth in my movie. I need at least a message. I need to feel something.
A decent performance or two?
Yes. Literally the only time I felt anything in this film to make me react out loud. There were some really good tension moments, but as far as a reaction was when they kissed. And I gasped and said, oh my gosh.
He's a goner.
He's a goner, yeah. Which I like how you pointed it out, that it is a very similar feeling to what I got in the first film when that blood drop fell in Frank's eye. I loved it. But that's pretty much all I got out of the film. It didn't feel as boring as the first one. The pacing wasn't bad here. But like I said earlier, the story just had the bare bones. I don't like to be confused about my character. I wanted Dawn's arc to feel earned. And on some level, this movie was only to spread the virus. However we did it didn't really matter. I do like the reconstruction narrative, but a lot of the character relationships felt pretty hollow. But I did like the end and how open-ended it was. I like to imagine that it was Andy who caused all this. And it would sort of parallel to the beginning with that little boy who caused everyone's death, except Dawn's. But I don't know if this movie knew that or not.
Yeah, I kind of wish this movie went the more conspiratorial route, where we got these rumblings of the virus is already outside of the British Isles. It's already in Paris. It's already in Germany or wherever. And it's just being kept on the down low somehow. And by the time the film ends, it kind of blows up to a global view of a bunch of ground zeros, ultimately. I like the reuse of the soundtrack. I like that kind of commitment to something good. I even kind of appreciate the commitment to the editing. It shows a level of passion and vision
and style.
And style and delicacy of, yeah, this is our thing. Even though it kind of sucks, it's still our thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's cute. Pound for pound, there's probably more set pieces and movement in this movie that I like much more than 28 Days. Like I said, the intro section with Dawn is very good. The breakout section in the quarantine zone is very cool. A lot of the sections with Doyle are good enough. Scarlet's kind of lame. The kids bring the movie down. I like that at every other pit stop, these random characters that are traveling with them die. So I don't know. I think 28 Weeks is a solid 1.5 as well. Doesn't have as much juice, but I was having a better time. But yeah, man, thank you again for talking about this film with me here today, and thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Filmsteins. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, we post every Wednesday and Friday on all the free feeds like YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, Patreon, Apple Podcast for all of the new episodes. Our next episode will be on 28 years later.
Surprise, surprise.
With the return of good old Danny Boyle. So please look forward to that. That should be a good talk. We do love a Danny Boyle film. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe, come write in, come request a film. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Filmsteins. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon, patreon.com/Filmsteins. And follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmsteins, signing off.